Imagine this. It is the break of dawn, and you are jolted awake by the blaring urgency of breaking news. Global headlines erupt. Israel has executed a devastating, meticulously coordinated airstrike on Iran's most fortified secret nuclear facilities. In capitals from Washington to Beijing, world leaders convene last-minute emergency summits. Financial markets tumble into chaos. The Middle East, a region already teetering on the edge, now stands at the brink of a conflict that could ripple across continents. Is this the spark that ignites a global catastrophe, or a desperate last-ditch effort to prevent one? This is not the plot of a Hollywood thriller. This is the world's new reality in June of the year 2025, a moment whose consequences could reverberate for generations yet unborn. To understand how we arrived at this critical crossroads, we must rewind the clock, peeling back the layers of history. Iran's nuclear ambitions did not materialize in a vacuum, nor did they emerge overnight. In fact, the roots of Iran's nuclear program stretch all the way back to the 1950s, a time when, in a profound twist of irony, the United States was the very nation that assisted Iran in setting up its first nuclear research reactors. The vision then was peaceful: nuclear energy to power a modernizing Iran. Yet history took a dramatic turn. The seismic shock of the Islamic Revolution in 1979 sent Iran's relationship with the West plummeting. Overnight, trust dissolved like desert dew. The nuclear program, once public and peaceful, slipped underground, both literally and figuratively. By the dawn of the 21st century, intelligence leaks and satellite imagery unveiled a clandestine network of secret facilities, from the now infamous Natanz to the highly fortified Fordow complex, buried deep beneath mountains. These revelations triggered global alarm bells. Was Iran racing to acquire the bomb? The world responded with a cocktail of pressure, isolation, and a series of ever-tightening sanctions. Years of painstaking diplomacy finally yielded a breakthrough in the summer of the year 2015. After endless rounds of negotiations, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, better known as the JCPOA, was signed. Iran agreed to curb uranium enrichment, dismantle the majority of its centrifuges, and open the doors to some of the most intrusive inspections ever imposed. In exchange, the international community eased sanctions, unlocking billions of dollars in frozen assets and trade. For a fleeting moment, the world exhaled. A sense of relief washed over global markets and political capitals alike. The following years unfolded like a slow-motion chess match, punctuated by flashes of violence. Proxy wars flared across the Middle East. Iranian-backed militias in Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon clashed with Israeli and Western forces. The International Atomic Energy Agency issued increasingly dire warnings about Iran's swelling uranium stockpiles, noting that Tehran was now operating advanced centrifuges previously banned under the nuclear deal. By early 2025, some nuclear experts estimated that Iran possessed enough enriched uranium to construct at least 3, possibly up to 5 nuclear warheads within a matter of months, should it decide to cross that final, irreversible threshold. All of this set the stage for what would become the most consequential military operation in the region in over a decade. On the night of June 13, 2025, after more than 8 months of meticulous planning, Israel unleashed Operation Iron Scepter. Under the cloak of darkness, waves of Israeli F-15 and F-35 fighter jets, supported by swarms of stealth drones and cutting-edge electronic warfare platforms, penetrated Iranian airspace. Their targets, the uranium enrichment complexes at Natanz and Fordow, the sprawling Tabriz airport that doubled as a military logistics hub, and a series of deeply buried bunkers believed to house both nuclear materials and high-ranking Revolutionary Guard officials. The assault was not merely a feat of military engineering. It was designed to send a psychological shockwave. According to reports from the Fars news agency, at least 78 people were killed, with more than 329 injured. The casualties included over 20 senior commanders from Iran's elite Revolutionary Guard Corps. Among the dead were 2 nuclear scientists, both under international sanctions for their roles in Iran's nuclear development, and the military chief of staff, a figure central to Iran's security apparatus. The loss of these leaders dealt a severe blow to Iran's command and control capabilities. Within hours, images of smoking craters, collapsed buildings, and frantic rescue operations flooded social media, even as Iranian authorities scrambled to impose digital blackouts. The government's attempts to control the narrative were upended by the rapid spread of unfiltered footage, much of it streamed via satellite internet connections made possible by Elon Musk's Starlink system, which had quietly been activated over Iran in anticipation of just such a crisis. President Donald Trump's response was a masterclass in political theater. Publicly, Trump declared that the United States had not participated in the strikes and urged restraint. The United States was not directly involved in the operation, he emphasized repeatedly. Yet, behind the scenes, White House officials admitted that Washington had been kept in the loop, and that the Trump administration had given Israel tacit approval through back-channel communications. As one senior aide revealed, "We told them it had to be unilateral. We would not put boots on the ground, but we understood the stakes." Seizing the moment, President Trump issued a pointed message to Tehran. "Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Other than that, I want them to be successful. We'll trade with them. We'll do whatever is necessary." Yet in less scripted moments, Trump laid bare the gravity of the situation. "I'd love to avoid the conflict. Iran's going to have to negotiate a little bit tougher, meaning they're going to have to give us some things that they're not willing to give us right now." He warned that any further aggression could unleash devastation, much worse than anything they know, anticipated, or were told. The United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio echoed this stance, emphasizing that Israel had acted alone. "Tonight, Israel took unilateral action against Iran. We are not involved in strikes against Iran, and our top priority is protecting American forces in the region," Rubio stated. He added that while Israel had informed the United States of its intentions, there was no direct American military participation. In the halls of Congress, bipartisan support for Israel surged. House Budget Chairman Jody Arrington declared, "The Iranian regime is run by terrorists who have openly called for the destruction of Israel. Past measures of appeasement and diplomacy have been futile in stopping Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. Israel is doing what any rational and responsible nation would do when faced with such an immediate existential threat." Yet, a chorus of voices cautioned against triumphalism. Daniel B. Shapiro, a former U.S. ambassador to Israel and now a fellow at the Atlantic Council, observed, "Israel has demonstrated time and again that it can strike targets deep inside Iran. But the critical question is, what happens next? Retaliation, escalation, or perhaps a return to negotiation?" Hamish de Bretton-Gordon, a former commander of Britain's chemical and biological defense forces, described the attack as preemptive, precise, and combined, meant to send a broader message to Iran and to any state in the region contemplating nuclear ambitions. But not all experts saw the operation as a clear-cut success. Marwan Bashara of Al Jazeera issued a stark warning. Israel's actions could destroy what's left of diplomacy, pushing Iran even closer to the bomb. Every strike hardens positions, fuels mistrust, and undermines the fragile possibility of a negotiated solution. Inside Iran, the mood was a volatile cocktail of shock, fury, and grim resolve. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei vowed revenge, branding the Israeli attack an act of war. Hardline factions took to the airwaves, demanding an immediate and overwhelming response. Within less than 24 hours, Iran launched a volley of ballistic missiles targeting Israeli military bases and critical infrastructure. Over 50 Israelis were reported injured, with at least one civilian killed. Air raid sirens wailed across Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, sending millions of Israelis scrambling for shelter, a stark reminder of how quickly the cycle of violence can spiral. The international reverberations were swift and severe. Oil prices skyrocketed, breaching $150 per barrel for the first time in more than a decade. The Strait of Hormuz, a strategic choke point through which almost one-fifth of the world's oil supply flows, suddenly became a potential flashpoint, with shipping lanes threatened by Iranian naval forces. Insurance premiums for cargo ships and oil tankers exploded overnight, sending ripples through global supply chains from Shanghai's container ports to the refineries of Rotterdam. The mere threat of a prolonged conflict was enough to send shockwaves through global commodity markets. Meanwhile, defense stocks soared as investors rushed to hedge against further escalation. Shares of major arms manufacturers, Lockheed Martin, Rafael Advanced Defense Systems, and BAE Systems, hit historic highs. Cybersecurity firms also saw windfall gains, as both Israel and Iran ramped up cyber operations, targeting one another's infrastructure and unleashing waves of disinformation across digital platforms. The technological front was no less critical than the physical battlefield. The conflict saw the deployment of advanced artificial intelligence-driven cyber tools, drone swarms capable of autonomous strikes, and the use of quantum encryption to shield military communications from prying eyes. As analysts pored over satellite imagery and intelligence reports, the initial assessment was sobering. While Israel's strikes had inflicted serious damage on critical infrastructure, they had not fully eliminated Iran's nuclear potential. The Fordow facility, protected by hundreds of meters of rock, sustained only limited damage. Its core centrifuges and much of the technical staff survived. The Natanz complex, by contrast, saw the destruction of several key research buildings and laboratories. Yet, as one analyst observed, the knowledge, what some call the nuclear brain trust, remains intact. You can bomb buildings, but you cannot bomb away expertise. According to the International Atomic Energy Agency, Iran's uranium enrichment program was set back by months, perhaps up to a year, but not destroyed. This mirrors historical precedents. Israel's earlier preemptive strikes, such as the destruction of Iraq's Osirak reactor in 1981 and the bombing of Syria's Al-Kabar facility in 2007, delayed but did not end those countries' nuclear pursuits. So, what paths lie ahead for the world? Three broad scenarios now dominate expert discussions. The first is the cautious optimist's scenario. Battered by violence and economic pain, both sides edge back to the negotiating table. Iran, reeling from military losses and the renewed bite of sanctions, agrees to more intrusive inspections and verifiable limits on its nuclear activities. In return, the United States and European Union offer phased relief from sanctions and perhaps even limited access to international markets. President Trump, eager for a legacy-defining diplomatic victory in an election year, pushes for a new grand bargain, one that not only curbs Iran's nuclear program, but also limits its missile development and support for regional proxies. In this scenario, the world inches back from the abyss, and Israel's gamble is vindicated by a new diplomatic breakthrough. The second, far grimmer scenario, a tit-for-tat spiral of escalation. Israel's strike provokes further Iranian missile attacks, not just on Israeli soil, but on U.S. military bases in Iraq, Saudi oil refineries, and even commercial shipping in the Persian Gulf. Cyber warfare intensifies, with both sides targeting power grids, financial systems, and critical infrastructure. Global markets plunge further into turmoil, with oil prices approaching record highs, and the specter of a regional war draws in outside powers, Russia, China, and the European Union, all seeking to protect their interests in the Middle East. The third, and perhaps most troubling scenario, is that Iran, feeling cornered and betrayed by what it sees as Western duplicity, accelerates its nuclear program in secret. With much of its research now hidden in deeper, better protected underground sites, Iran's scientists double down on developing a credible nuclear deterrent, regardless of the cost. This could set off a domino effect, triggering a regional nuclear arms race. Saudi Arabia has long warned that it will not stand by if Iran acquires the bomb. Turkey, too, might seek nuclear capabilities, shattering the already fragile non-proliferation order in the Middle East. The danger of nuclear weapons falling into the hands of non-state actors increases dramatically, raising the stakes for every nation on Earth. It is worth drawing lessons from history. The world has seen similar moments before. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, when the United States and the Soviet Union stood on the brink of nuclear war, ultimately ended not with bombs, but with back-channel diplomacy, a secret deal, a phone call, a handshake. Likewise, the Indian and Pakistani nuclear standoff in the late 20th century, or North Korea's relentless pursuit of the bomb despite decades of sanctions and threats, underscore a sobering reality. Military strikes can delay, but rarely destroy, a nation's nuclear ambitions. They may even strengthen resolve. The current crisis also highlights the evolving nature of warfare and international relations. We are witnessing the dawn of a new era in information warfare. Tools like Starlink have become double-edged swords, champions of transparency and resistance, but also potential vulnerabilities if weaponized by hostile actors or exploited for propaganda. The battle for public opinion, fought across social media and digital platforms, may ultimately prove as decisive as the clash of armies in deserts or skies. For investors, analysts, and ordinary citizens, the events of June 2025 are a vivid reminder that geopolitics remains a prime mover of markets, technology, and everyday life. Oil prices, defense budgets, global supply chains, and the very architecture of the internet can all be upended by a single missile strike in the Middle East. Companies with exposure to energy, shipping, cybersecurity, and telecommunications must now factor geopolitical risk into every decision, no matter how local or routine it may seem. Beyond the headlines and the market reactions, there are profound human costs. Families in Tehran, Tel Aviv, and beyond now live with the ever-present fear of sudden violence. The psychological toll on civilians, the trauma of displacement, and the erosion of trust in institutions. These are impacts that linger long after the last bomb falls. Humanitarian agencies warn of refugee flows, food and medicine shortages, and the risk of health crises as infrastructure comes under attack. What practical lessons can we draw from this moment? First, global security is more fragile than many realize. Decisions made by a handful of leaders in distant capitals can alter the course of history overnight. The Middle East, with its tangled web of alliances, rivalries, and ancient grievances, is uniquely prone to miscalculation and unintended escalation. Second, military action, no matter how technologically advanced, rarely resolves the underlying political disputes. As Hamish de Breton Gordon succinctly put it, military strikes can buy time, but only diplomacy can buy peace. The annals of nuclear proliferation are filled with examples where threats and bombings only deepened resolve rather than dissuaded ambition. Third, the information domain has become inseparable from the battlefield. The ability to control, or lose control over, the narrative can influence public opinion, international support, and even the morale of those directly involved in the conflict. For policymakers and citizens alike, one message stands out. The greatest barrier to a nuclear-armed Iran is not bombs, sanctions, or even the most sophisticated military hardware. It is the willingness of leaders to compromise, communicate, and chart a different course. Even the most powerful weapons cannot extinguish the universal desire for security or the hope for peace. So, did Israel's June 2025 strike halt Iran's nuclear quest? The answer, as with so much in geopolitics, is complicated. Israel disrupted Iran's immediate plans, eliminated key figures, and sent an unmistakable signal that nuclear ambitions will not go unchallenged. Yet the underlying motivations, technological expertise, and regional rivalries remain. In many respects, the strike may have only deepened Iran's determination and opened the door to new levels of risk, mistrust, and instability across the Middle East. As the world watches anxiously, one thing is certain. The decisions made in the coming weeks and months will shape not just the fate of Iran and Israel, but the security and prosperity of the entire planet. Will cooler heads prevail, or will the cycle of violence spiral beyond anyone's control? If you found this story thought-provoking, hit that like button and subscribe for more in-depth explorations of the forces shaping our world. What is your perspective? Did the strike make the world safer, or has it pushed us closer to disaster? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious.